Thank you guys for tuning in to yet another episode. This time I got to sit down with Colin Wright. He's a renowned scientist and biologist. He's a journalist, a writer, a podcaster, and he's currently working on a new book. It was an absolute pleasure sitting down and talking to him about some current events in the news, as well as some of his work. I hope you enjoy this one, guys. So I guess to start this conversation, I don't know if you've been paying attention to all this Elon Trump nonsense going on. They're fighting. It looks like they're breaking up more or less. What are your thoughts? I have many. I want to hear what your thoughts are on all this.
I mean, I feel like, I do. I think I saw a lot of this coming. Just two enormous egos.
Yeah.
Two people who aren't used to taking orders from anyone. Two people who are always used to having the last word when it comes to something. So I just think it was inevitable. I mean, you have Elon who wanted, the whole Doge thing. He was really set on cutting all this government spending. And he's, on the spectrum and stuff. So he's like very literal, and he's maybe not completely accounting for the fact that like the political side of things, they're going to like do anything to get votes to some degree. And so that's just kind of where the political met reality when Trump wants to pass like a big bill because it's what presidents do, and it's a big political win for him, and then Elon's just like, but what about the spending? And it's just like, sorry, dog.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you.
Right.
And then there was like the little back and forths, if you want to call it that. I mean, it's bad optics. It's just not useful. I hope it doesn't like really show up in polling numbers, and it seems like they've cooled off a bit right now, but it got pretty heated there for a bit.
I feel like everyone's kind of already not forgot about it, but everyone's kind of just like, this is ridiculous. It's like watching two children fight to some degree, and once
Did
it's
you see
over,
that little
over.
small account with there's a small account with 100 followers or something, and after Elon threatened to decommission the Dragon thing for that's the only spaceship that can go from the space station. There's a little account was just like, maybe you should just like cool off for a little bit and come back tomorrow in a cool head. And he's just like, you know what, you're right. So it's like, little accounts, your voice matters.
Apparently
your history.
I had a weird thought, especially with that one accusation that he made about the Epstein list, where he said Trump is on the Epstein list and just wait and, bookmark this and it'll come out later. My thought is that it was either one, very reactionary, and he was just trying to get under Trump's skin. He knew that's exactly the thing that would do it, especially given the fact that they haven't released the Epstein list. This is kind of a point of tension with a lot of Trump voters, I think, right now. Like, why haven't you released the list? You told us you would. Kash Patel's been kind of dancing around it. So is Pam Bondi, it seems. And I think that's what he knew. He knew he could say that and get the whole internet talking about this, in a sense. Or, which I don't know if this is true, but I theorized of maybe this is his way of trying to get them to release the list. If he can say Trump is on it, well, the only way that Trump is going to verify that he's not on it is by releasing the list and showing everybody. But I don't think that's going to happen.
I don't think so. I think both sides have an incentive maybe not to release it because there's going to be so I think there's just an issue too, where it's just like, what does it mean to be on the Epstein list? It's just like, people, and when we react to it in the public, we're like, oh, he was on the list, that means he's a pedophile. It's just like, well, I mean, there were people that Epstein, had in the whatever the black failed pedo island type thing, but then there were a lot of people he's probably just courting and but they shared a plane ride and had discussions with, had a dinner, who had nothing to do with the much darker, sinister side of things. And, that might be, they're still on the list because they're in the context or whatever. So the deeper context matters. Like, well, okay, it's on the big list, but, people like Steven Pinker are on the list.
Yeah.
And they had like a photo just like at a dinner.
Like Eric Weinstein,
like, and everyone
I think.
uses that to be like, Pinker's a pedophile. It's just like, okay, I'm pretty sure he's not. So...
Yeah, and I've heard Eric Weinstein talk about this too, about how many people...
There's a lot of people who've just been in the orbit because he's the billionaire.
He knows everybody. He's trying to market with everybody he possibly can. Someone like Epstein, of course, there's the whole blackmail thing going on, but I'm sure a large percentage of people that had any kind of business relationship or even just casual, he was trying to build a business relationship with them, had nothing to do with the actual sinister, nefarious stuff that we think of. And how do you verify that? Well, they'd have to release even more information. it's a large accusation. I wonder if there's going to be any lawsuits that come out of it. I don't know at this point. If I don't know.
Yeah,
I feel like nobody
I was
really
shocked
took it
that
seriously.
Elon just went full pedal to the metal with that one.
Yeah, it's absolutely
he didn't take
crazy.
it back. Yeah. Well, he deleted the tweet. Didn't take it back. So
he deleted it.
We'll see.
I didn't even realize that.
That's what I heard. I haven't verified, but
yeah.
I was told that he deleted the tweet.
Well, good for him. So, he had his autism flared up a little bit, I guess, and.
I know never to cross Elon, because he will, if he's got dirt on you, he will just go to the max.
Right. Exactly.
Instantly.
So what do you think about what's going on in LA right now with all the riots and a bunch of crazy stuff? I'm sure most people have at least encountered some video or something from it at this point.
I mean, it's completely insane. I'm from California. I grew up in California. I was born in the Sacramento area. I did my undergrad at UC Davis. I did grad school at UC Santa Barbara. So I've been in LA a lot, just in and out, visiting friends and family type of thing. I mean, the BLM riots, the post-COVID stuff, well, the COVID and post-COVID, and just all that stuff is what made me move to Nashville, Tennessee in the first place. So I was a part of that exodus of people from California going to red states just to avoid all of that. I mean, it's not even just the protesting, it's the school policies and the transing your kids type of stuff. And it was getting increasingly authoritarian, and I want to start a family at some point, hopefully very soon. And I didn't want kids to grow up in areas where there's going to be violent rioting and, insane ideological stuff in their schools. So, yeah, I mean, I look at this, it reminds me of the BLM riots, and it reminds me of why I'm no longer in California, and I'm incredibly thankful.
It's very similar to the BLM riots. I mean, even the response from the media where they're saying it's mostly peaceful and it's just people having fun. And then simultaneously they're showing videos of cars getting literally blown up, people throwing rocks at police officers, people fighting each other. I mean, it's virtually the same thing all over again.
I would like to, I haven't done it, but I would kind of like to just watch MSNBC just to see how much of the actual fires and violence they're actually airing on it, because my girlfriend Christina Buttons, she talked about how she had these moments where she realized she was being lied to, and she just started watching the other medias, what they were showing, and how come we never saw these crazy riots? We didn't see the burning buildings and all this stuff like that, because it was just completely siloed. They might show a few people protesting or something, they'll show the peaceful sides of things. I think it would be interesting to see how much airtime is actually given to what's going on there.
Right.
Because it's entirely possible that on MSNBC, they're just not covering it.
Because I've always wondered, and that's a good point, because I've always wondered kind of how do people fall for this kind of propaganda? I mean, because, on social media, if you're on X, if you're following people like yourself or me or many other people who are just posting the raw footage many times of what's happening, or at least sharing it from what other people have shared, that stuff goes viral pretty quickly. If you're on social media, you're going to see that. But if all you are doing is watching the news, it makes sense why you would have no idea what's actually happening, or at least you would think it's a very, very watered down version. The funny part is, though, I've been seeing these clips over the last couple of days here of the LA riots, where I think it was I want to say NBC News. It was either NBC or ABC, where the reporter was saying something like how this is mostly peaceful. It's just people having fun. They literally said the line people having fun watching cars burn or something. And they showed this video, this carnage behind him. It looked like a scene from the Joker movie. And it's just
watching cars burn. It's how did the cars get on fire? They just spontaneously combusted.
Right. It's exactly. And even if let's just say riots removed, even if it was people just burning a car, which that's severe, that's incredibly severe, that's horrible. Why would they glorify that? Even if it was just one or two people doing that, why would they glorify that on the news and then present it as if it's this peaceful thing happening when the optics are clearly anything but that? I don't get that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I remember during the Ferguson riots and stuff, I can't remember what politician said. It was just they would need to give them room to rage or something like that. It's just this idea that people only react like that because of environmental circumstances, because they were pushed to it, because they can't control themselves. It's sort of like this external locus of control ideology that you see a lot of on the left. And if people are behaving in these ways, it's because the system is broken, and they're totally justified in doing it. It's just kind of the way they keep rationalizing all these things. The BLM Right's like, well, the country's systemically racist. Like, why wouldn't they be like writing like this? You can just forever excuse these types of things if like your worldview just views human behavior in this way, that like people wouldn't steal unless they were needy, and people wouldn't riot unless their rights were being taken away. But like people can actually just be wrong about things.
And that the thing that's always boggled my mind is, what is the incentive for the media, like, or even the elites that are pushing this stuff through the media? What's their incentive? Do they want to live in a world or in a country or in a community that's just completely burned to the ground? It doesn't, even just pragmatically, it doesn't seem like it's self-serving. You know what I mean? I've never understood that. I mean, I understand the ideology and the worldview and the social constructivism and the oppressed versus oppressor garbage that's fueling a lot of this, at least ideologically speaking. But like, just pragmatically, what's actually in it for them?
I think there's like some true believers. Yeah, I think there's some like true believers that are there that maybe like the ones who are funding actual riots, the ones who are dropping off like the pallets of bricks and all that type of stuff. Like those people are just revolutionaries. They just want to see the world burn, constant revolution type of stuff.
Alfred was right.
I think for like most of the I think most of the people, though, most of the politicians, most everyday people, unfortunately, we're just like in a point in time where we're so politically polarized that even if most people don't agree with the riots, if you say that like, oh, it's probably good that Trump is bringing in the National Guard or the Marines to help quell this thing, it's just like, well, that helps Trump, and Trump is literally Hitler, and so we can't do anything that's going to help him in any way. Like, you can't give them any good optics and say anything good about him.
Right.
And so you get to this thing where like, no matter what we do, they're going to be against it. No matter what they do, we're going to be against it.
Yeah. It's like they have to support.
It's just like a total race to the bottom.
Yep. It's like they have to support, even if it's something as terrible as this, they have to support it because it's the thing that Trump is against. So they have to be for the thing that Trump is against, and they've kind of boxed themselves into this weird corner to where, I mean, it's getting as crazy to where there's videos of people trying to throw giant rocks at cops' heads from a bridge, and the media is essentially, and you have elected officials even in California. Like I saw this video of this representative in California saying that they need to up the how did she word it? Something like where they need to up the tactics, or they need to up the ante. It's like if that's where it already is, if that's already where the bar is, blowing up cars, trying to kill cops. I mean, that's essentially what they're trying to do. I don't know what else that would be classified as. Attempted murder. Yeah. If that's where the bar is, how can that possibly be escalated without it being just obscene acts of terrorism? But this is where they're at because Trump is against this, so they have to be against it, and they have to stand in solidarity with all these people against Trump. It's completely deranged.
I mean, I can't remember the name for the term, but James Lindsay talks about it, and it's like, what they're hoping is for your overreaction. And I think James Lindsay is right, as they're hoping that they can, provoke Trump to the point where he, brings the National Guard and the Marines, and then that's going to provoke a bigger response on their side. You get a bunch of crazy people who want to act like they're just like in end times and the apocalypse and stuff. And then, when things get really heated up like that, someone could get shot and killed, whether it's a illegal immigrant, whether it's someone on, the Marines. And, Lindsay thinks they're looking for sort of an undocumented Floyd or something situation where, it'll be a flashpoint that'll start an even greater level of unrest. And
so they're hoping.
I do think a lot of the activists, that's what they want. They just want things to get crazier and crazier.
Yeah, it's like, so they're hoping for a cop or a Marine or whoever to kill one of these illegal protesters, and they're going to essentially blow that up. Is that what you're saying? Into a BLM 2.0, but worse.
I think a lot of that is just trying to provoke something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I've been seeing this a lot. I've been seeing, Democrats, obviously, these leftists, I don't know, I'll use the word liberal, but I don't think that's the right word for it. Uh, the Democrats, you'll see them, and then you'll see these kind of crazy communists literally wearing Soviet flags. I've been seeing videos of that. And then you'll see them paired with the radical Islamists where they've got those handkerchief things on. It's like, this is a weird, and then like the LGBTQ radicals, all of these people coming together. None of these people seem to have much of anything in common. What do you think the reason they're all coming together?
So I think the main thing that ties them all together is really just like a fundamentally anti-West. They're against anything that is Western or coded Western. So it's the oppressor-oppressed dynamic that they have. Anything in any situation that lands on that oppressed side is like on their side. So it's just like you get the trans people because they're not cis. You get like all the colored people because they're not white. You get the Palestinians because they are kind of coding Israel as Jewish as white now. It's just everything that's on the opposite side of that. Like it's of the oppressor-oppressed scale. And this is fundamentally anti-West, the colonizer, that type of thing too. So that's why, you've seen some of the people posting like those maps of, I can't remember the name of it, but it's just like the Mexican territory that they're saying they want to take back over in like California and parts of Texas. It's just like, that's the colonizer thing going right there. It's fundamentally like anti-Western. I think it all really just kind of boils down to just, they hate the Western values and everything it stands for.
Right. Because you'll see them, it's this odd paradox, which what you said makes sense. But it's this odd paradox if you're looking at it just blindly speaking, in a sense, where you'll see them, saying they hate America so much and they're flying their Mexican flags or whatever flag, or their Palestinian flags, and they hate America. Also, they're so angry, allegedly, that they have to leave America to where they're going to start blowing stuff up. It's like, do they love America? Yeah. Do they hate America? Like, which? But I think you're right. It's just this: they hate America. Their protest against being deported from America has nothing to do with their love for America. It has to do with the fact that they loathe it, and they want to see. They're here because they want to destroy and tear down America, and they don't like the fact that they're being kicked out. And the American people, the American government is actually standing up for itself against this.
There's just always this interesting dynamic where, like, the countries that are the most moral, in my view, you get like the United States, you get places like Israel where they have codes of honors that they stand to. They're the ones that are getting attacked most brutally by, and called terrible names and things like that, because they are the ones that are more subject to like self-reflection and actually be like, they're capable of feeling guilt. Like the United States and people, we're capable of being like, oh, we feel guilty about our past. Maybe we should rethink things. But you never see them go to like other countries, like Islamic countries or anything like that, because they'll just laugh you out of the room if you're like, let us in here. We're invading your country. You guys are terrible. Like, we're going to wave foreign flags in your country. There was this zero tolerance for that stuff there. And so they don't even try it there. But since we allow it here, then they use it, and then they shame us, and they, try to use it as leverage to upend the only country that like will actually let them do these things and give them those freedoms. Yeah. So it's kind of a weird paradox. Yeah, it's just like we're the only one that's capable of feeling shame. And right. So they try to shame us, because even though other countries are more worthy of shame, like they're shameless and they won't even react to it. So it's bad.
Yeah, it's like
bad situation.
It's like we have this moral high ground in a sense, and I think rightfully so to a large degree. But then these people will use that against us. So they'll use the fact that we're not going to retaliate in evil, and we're not going to do what Iran would do to people if they tried to do this in Iran or Pakistan or any other one of these countries, or even Russia or China or whatever it might be. We're going to let people protest peacefully when it's happening. We're going to allow people to have a large variety of different opinions and views and vote differently and all this stuff. And there's a huge, which is funny because these people will act like America is the least tolerant place in the world. That's what you'll get if you watch exclusively CNN and you are following people that are allegedly, doing all this crazy stuff, the BLM people, these new rioters here, and this new movement. You'll think that America is the worst place on earth, and that it's, this intolerant, bigoted, horrible place. But the exact opposite seems to be true. Like, we're the ones allowing, we'll let them get to the point to where they're blowing up stuff before we're like, okay, maybe we should do something about this. Yeah. That is incredibly tolerant.
Yeah. It's counterintuitive, because you see more of this stuff in the U.S. because we have a free press that goes out there and documents it, and you can criticize our politicians and the president and stuff like that. And so there's more stories, I guess, to report on because it's there and we allow this to happen. But if you were to go to the UAE or something like that, there's good things about the country, bad things about it. They won't allow any sort of dissent about the government. If people are throwing riots, they will quell that instantly. And so you don't see the unrest because they just squash it because there's authoritarian governments. So,
right.
it's kind of a weird paradox because you see worse things here than you see over there, but just because we allow them, because we're a freer country than they are.
Yeah, and that's kind of the give and take with freedom. It seems it's like in order to actually have a functioning free society, I mean, you can have a free society that's just complete anarchy, but in order to have a functioning free society, people seems to some degree need to have some moral guidelines and some more some personal responsibility. I mean, this is the thing that Jordan Peterson always talks about. And I think that's absolutely necessary in order for us to maintain our freedom, in order for freedom to actually work in any sort of cohesive manner. And I think, tell me what you think about this. It almost seems like, so they hate the West, they hate the United States, they hate freedom and the concepts of liberty ultimately. And America seems to be like the pinnacle, the global representation of freedom. And in order to destroy freedom, well, the easiest way to do that is to destroy the moral fabric of the country itself. Because once the moral fabric is destroyed, then they can use that as the excuse to stomp on us essentially and come in and organize everything once the chaos settles, in a sense.
That's kind of why I left the left because I saw this pattern where we were making a lot of progress on so many issues, like racism was improving. If fewer people are racist, more and more people approve of interracial marriages, and all the metrics in society have been showing that we're just approaching just better outcomes for on many issues. Crime rates are going down, that type of stuff. But you have this tendency where people want to be moving through a time where there are these big moral dragons that they're going to be slaying. And it's hard for them to just say actually most of the big civil rights achievements, the big ones, there's always going to be smaller ones, but the big ones have already we're past that now. And so you're just going to have to be content with incremental gains from now on. But they're well, we don't get that cathartic response of doing something huge and having a huge, gigantic moral victory. And they crave that. You can see some people they're pretending they're in the 60s again when they speak about racial issues, is because they kind of want to be. They want to feel that sense. And so then once we're in the society that's better now, and they can't get these big payoffs. And so what do? That usually somehow the morality gets flipped, and then now all of a sudden it's the opposite of Martin Luther King, judging people by the content of their character instead of color of their skin. Now we're just equity and DEI and all that stuff is just the flip side of that. And then they make a lot of changes, and then they confuse a lot of change with progress. And I think that's kind of the situation we have right now. We're not content with incremental moral gains. We want to just have these big moments and feel like we're achieving so much. I kind of get it, but at the same time, you need to be susceptible to actual data on these things and find something else. Find your own smaller cause. You can get meaning from that too.
Yeah, and you're right where you say to juxtapose change with progress. They call themselves progressives. This is the irony, but they're not progressing towards something positive. They're progressing towards something negative rapidly, and it's completely eroding the moral fabric of this country. And there's that famous. Was it James Madison, that famous James Madison quote where he says something basically that America exists for he says something like moral and religious people, and it cannot exist without anything else. Completely butchering and paraphrasing the quote. But I think whether or not you're even a Christian, I think that idea still applies. It's you have to take responsibility for yourself. You have to have ownership of your own actions and treat everybody how you'd want to be treated in order for us to have ultimate freedoms, the freedoms that we want, and that are supposed to exist within our society. As far as the transgender movement. Now, this is I think this is, at this point, people, there's not much gray area with this issue anymore. Have you seen any progress? I know you've been doing quite a bit of reporting and posting about this. Have you seen any progress as far as how the public is perceiving this issue? Because I know it seemed like at one point, a few years back, everyone seemed to kind of be getting sucked into this, even people you wouldn't suspect. I know people personally, even friends that I had in the past, I lost friends over it. And do you think there's any sort of balancing back out to the middle, or to at least some position of sanity, or is it still going?
It's been enormous. We've had like enormous progress. The first article I ever wrote about this, when I like my coming out publicly against the gender ideology, was in 2018, and that was in Quillette, and it went like really viral and stuff. And the biggest comment, because I was people are denying the reality of the sexes, the stuff I still talk about today. And then everyone in the comments, there were some people who got it, but most of the people were just like, you're just conflating sex and gender, and no one's actually denying what sex is. And, it was just all these people saying that I missed the point, that I don't understand the argument they're making. And, I'm just like, I'm telling you, people, like, they really don't think sex is real. Like, I don't know what to, like, here's all the sources. But now everybody gets it. Now everyone knows, like, okay, you don't get like Leah Thomas, like a male competing in female sports, if people understand what sex is. Like, you just don't get there. And so, people are aware. People know how crazy it is. More people are standing up. You got people like Riley Gaines and Paula Scanlon, all these people that have big accounts that are championing this stuff. You have organizations like GenSpect and Do No Harm. I remember when these organizations first started, because there were nothing. There were just a bunch of like groups of people on Twitter who are finding each other and be like scrambling around. Like, what do you do? I'm a psychotherapist. What do you do? Like, I do, cognitive behavioral therapy. And everyone was just like founding a bunch of groups. So there was like this scattering of little organizations popping up. And then there was like kind of a consolidation after into these bigger ones that we see now. And conferences about, pushing against gender affirming career. I was just at a heterodox conference in the UK just a couple of days ago. None of these things were even happening. The idea that we'd have a conference about pushing back against gender medicine, it was unfathomable. But now they happen sometimes multiple times a year. We're now Trump's in the White House. I helped make one of the HHS reports defining sex in law. We're pushing back. We got them on their heels. They actually have to respond to this stuff right now. They can't just ignore the critics and call us transphobes, because like it just doesn't work on us anymore. Yeah. Like, we're not going to shut up. So immense progress on this. From literally zero people seem to be aware of this to like everyone knows what's going on. And are really good and incisive about how they're going after it. So I'm very optimistic.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think the grave error that the radicals made on the left, that the trans activists made, was going after kids. I think that was the tipping point for most people. And when most people, I think before that, were just kind of what you were saying, they either didn't know what was going on, never heard of this stuff, or they just didn't care because it was like, who cares? It's just an adult being weird in his own house, you know what I mean? Kid, bringing kids into it, you're automatically publicizing it at that point, especially bringing it into education, the medical procedures done on kids. I think that was the point of no return for them, where they have to answer for this stuff.
I mean, in the beginning, a lot of it was just exposing what's actually in school. And a lot of this happened because during COVID, all the school was remote, and so you parents can be like, what's in your lecture here? And there's the genderbread person, and it's just like completely insane stuff.
Yeah.
So that was in a way, that was kind of a gift to a lot of the people, because otherwise, just sometimes you don't know what's just going on in your kids' class, I guess. So there is a lot of just exposing the stuff that's going on there. And then, of course, if you expose it, then, if they have a website that has some crazy gender stuff on it, they immediately take it down as soon as you expose it. And it's like, well, that's an interesting behavior, because if you stand by this and you think it's good, like, why wouldn't you just keep it up?
Right.
So yeah, there's a lot of scrambling going around on their side to like wash the internet of all the stuff they're doing. But I'm sure and I know for a fact they're still doing a lot of this behind closed doors and stuff. But there's progress on literally all fronts on the gender stuff, because parents they're no longer confused at what's going on, and a lot of them are just super pissed. And so you get one of those in a meeting at a school board, and they're just going to be this obstinate.
Those are my favorite videos on the internet.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, they're great. Awesome. They're fantastic. But before, just like me, when people were first telling me about all the gender stuff, and I was really trying to like listen to what they're saying, like, tell me again. So I have to be missing something because what you said sounds crazy. And then they just, said the crazy thing again. And so at some point I went from just this point of confusion, like you're never quite out of the confusion because it's all crazy, but you realize that they are actually insane, and that no, you're not the crazy one, like they are. And then you just sort of, you're no longer afraid because you're just, you tried, you did your due diligence, you gave them the opportunity to say something that sounded intelligible, and they failed. So yeah.
So you said that you were part of that defining gender with the Health and Human Services, right? Has there been any progress? I know even in states, it's probably obvious that the federal government with Trump in it is going to make some serious positive progress away from this stuff. But like on a state level, like let's say in California or New York or more liberal states, has there been really any progress, or has it been pretty stagnant?
It's tough. It's going to be like a state by state thing at this point. But the good thing about having sort of at the federal level the definitions of male and female, and this is, if you have an organization that is receiving any government funding, like this is your that has sex segregated spaces to any degree, sports or bathrooms or whatever. Yeah. Like this has to be the definition they're using of male and female across the entire country. And so this puts us in the position where, like, well, if a state doesn't like that, then when a lot of them don't, the blue states, they're going to sue. The ACLU is going to sue the government, and then that's good because before they would just, they could just hide behind, changing definitions and just, no one voted for this stuff. But now they actually have to like show their work in court. They need to, make their arguments, right. And then, people are hiring me to be like an expert witness and talk to the ACLU lawyers and make them just turn into these gibbering fools when they try to talk about sex not being real, and they're in front of an actual biologist who knows the biology really well. And this is what we want. I want to expose them. I want to get these things on record so that you can post them, because finally they have to actually say this stuff out loud. And the biggest benefit they had before is they could just, they were never challenged publicly. They never had to air their views and say the crazy stuff out loud. So yeah. I'm hoping we're going to see more of that.
Yeah, they actually have to. That's a good point. They actually have to show up now and show their work or lack thereof. Really, they can't just hide behind elusivity and vague nonsense and.
It's really so. I was cross-examined by an ACLU lawyer for like the Texas HB. I can't remember the numbers, but it was the big one in Texas that eventually we lost that one, but it went up to the Texas Supreme Court, which we won. But the lawyers were trying to cross-examine me and bringing up all the, the clownfish and all that crazy stuff. And then at some point it was just going like terribly for them, and they could tell, and they just started pulling up my tweets and being like, well, what about this? And then, trying to make it so portray me as some bigot. But then like, I'm always pretty careful with what I tweet. And so they'd pull up a tweet and I'd be like, oh, actually make a really good point there. Would you like me to elaborate on this point of my tweet? And they're just like, no, that's the next one. So all that stuff is just gold, like for social media and making people just realize that, like, the whole emperor's no clothes thing.
So that's like, is that the bulk of your work right now is doing that sort of stuff? Basically from a scientific perspective.
Yeah, a lot of it's the legal side.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd say there's two halves to the stuff I'm doing. Mostly it's like the scientific literature side, because we need to actually be able to cite things like there's only two sexes and sex is binary, because this had traditionally been just kind of like common knowledge, and you don't usually.
I was just going to say, it's crazy we even have to say that.
And that type of stuff. Yeah, but we actually need to and I'm writing the papers that are basically what I would consider just common knowledge, so we can actually cite things right now, because it's almost impossible to cite there's no papers on it, and the only ones that are out there are by the activists who are just butchering the whole concept of it. So it's getting stuff in the actual scientific literature, and then doing like expert testimony, trying to actually change letters of laws in states and at the federal level and that type of stuff. Yeah, and then educating the public. I write for City Journal, which is sort of the Manhattan Institute publication there.
Yeah. So like what motivated you to get involved with all this stuff in the first place? Because I'm sure it wasn't, it was at the expense of a lot of your colleagues, of a lot of people that you knew previously. Like I'm sure many people who were, came from the left. I've talked to many people who came from the left that are now more either center or right wing, or I guess they're considered right wing now because they're not part of the trans cult or BLM cult or whatever this stuff is. What was it that really motivated you to, I guess, jump ship?
It was seeing people post on like Facebook and stuff, because I really came aware of this when I was in graduate school. Maybe around 2015 is when I kind of just noticed that there was a problem. I had colleagues that would post stuff like a new Anne Fausto Sterling article about like why there's 5 sexes, and they were saying that sex is a social construct and all this stuff. And I knew just from my field, I was in graduate school to be an evolutionary biologist, and I studied behavior. And we have like all this deep education on sex, not just sex differences, but what sex is fundamentally, because when you go to a new system, if they reproduce sexually, you need to be able to know which one's male or female. And if you're looking at a species that is not a human, you can't, use features like beards and breasts and things like that. Right. You have to like know what it means to be a male at a fundamental level, which happens the type of gamete that you produce. And so I just knew that they were wrong when they were posting this stuff. And I was trying to clarify, I was so polite. It's, I think you're just misinterpreting this. And I would type on Facebook. And then I was expecting, as someone who's in the sciences, that I would just get back like scientific arguments like, oh no, we've discovered this new thing or whatever. But it was always just like, you're a bigot, you're parroting these far right conservative talking points and all this stuff. And I was like, well, this is really bizarre. And I already had I had a blog at the time that I was kind of updating, and I like to like do a lot of debunking pseudoscience and stuff. It was just kind of a fun hobby. And I saw this as kind of similar to that. And then once I started like looking beneath the surface, I was like, okay, they're not responding in a way that you would expect a scientist to respond. There's got to be some other like motivating factor here. And then, so I started looking at just like the literature behind this stuff, like the sex spectrum and all the activist arguments for this stuff. And it wasn't just some scientists saying something wrong. Like there was this like long history of this type of thought through the humanities and Judith Butler and all this stuff. And it immediately showed that it was just like this complete insane thing that was somehow made it inroads into actual biology. And now biologists are making these same insane points. And I don't know, I've always just been of the mindset where I'm a biologist and I'm literally paid to like try to say true things about biology. And now people don't want me to say anything about this. And I just couldn't stand it. I had to keep talking about it, because it's not just like this idea that doesn't harm anybody. Like it's being used as a justification to
destroy people's lives,
surgeries to children, to destroy women's sports, all kinds of stuff. It's there's so many consequences in society for this wrong idea about sex.
It's being quite literally weaponized, against people.
Yeah. So I finally just got the guts to publish an article and put my name on it, and then no one else was really talking about it early on, and so I kind of became the go-to person for discussing on what the biology of sex is, and I still kind of am. There's still really not any new biologists that have come forward. There's maybe 5 of us really that are just still banging this drum anywhere approaching full time. So
where do you think, or when did this kind of start? This is something I'm pretty ignorant on as far as the evolution of how this trans stuff even kind of got a grip of society in the first place. Like, how did that happen? Where did it start?
The dates are difficult to like pin down on this stuff. I mean, as far as we're concerned with, there's always been like the transsexual movement. So there was a definitional shift that happened like during the Obama presidency. Before you would hear of like transsexuals, and if you talk to like these older trans people, they'll call themselves transsexuals, like Buck Angel. Like Buck is like, I'm not transgender, I'm transsexual. And it had like a specific meaning. It's like someone who actually took steps to like medicalize themselves and appear and live as appearing as a member of the opposite sex. And it was always framed in this way of just like, they do this because it makes them feel better. None of those people were delusional about what sex they were. They didn't think they were like born in the wrong body. They just felt like they had so much pain inside, and they would feel better if they could just move through society appearing a certain way. And it's just like, okay, you're an adult, go for it, I guess. But then there was a shift from transsexual to transgender.
Yeah.
And I want to say this was like in the mid 2000s or something, right around there.
Yeah, because
during the Obama presidency.
I feel like the first time I remember hearing even that term was maybe, so I graduated high school 2014, and I feel like it was right around there. I feel like I don't remember
it was
across
close
that.
To right around there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you look at like how a lot of our institutions define transgender, it's like the most the largest umbrella term ever. It's like anybody who what is it, like identifies as like, or behaves or expresses themselves in a way that is not aligned with traditional expectations of and they would be like sex assigned at birth. So it's like, okay, so if you're an effeminate male or if you're a masculine woman, like, well, that is someone who's behaving or expressing themselves in a manner that is not traditionally associated with being male or female. Like, you've just transed almost everyone, women who aren't wearing dresses, men who aren't just like maximally masculine in every situation. And this is the definition now. You can look at it. That's what they say in the CDC and the APA and all these psychological associations.
Wasn't that ironic? Because on one hand, they say that, gender is fluid and it's essentially a social construct. It can move and ebb and flow in any direction. And there's nothing really defining of each gender. But then on the other hand is, in order to actually be transgender, there's this like push to completely morph your physical body into something that it's not. It's like, which is it?
Yeah. But, they have this, so they've shifted like the arguments, what they're doing. And now they have the idea, they think that sex isn't like a property of your body. Like, you're not male or female. They think that you need to break it down by like a trait by trait basis. So they would say like, well, you have male chromosomes, you have male facial hair, you have a male, you have a deeper voice, so you have a male to voice pitch. And then they've also included like the brain in this. And the brain, you can have feminized or masculinized brain structures, and they now classify that as brain sex, which equates to gender identity. And so the whole premise of the gender affirming care now is that, well, you can have a body that might look typically masculine or feminine, but you can have a brain that is mismatched to that. And we can't give you psychotherapy to like change the way you think about yourself, because that's conversion therapy, according to them. But what we can do, because since sex is just like this multifaceted thing of multiple characteristics, all of which can be, or most of which, instead of except your chromosomes and things like that, can be modified. We can give you cross-sex hormones that are going to change your breasts and your voice pitch and your facial hair and your fat distribution
to match the brain.
So we can actually change your body sex to match your brain sex, and now you're aligned. That's kind of how they're going at it now. And this is, I'm responding to these like expert witness testimony in court cases where they're literally talking about like this brain sex stuff. So that's actually a big thing I'm debunking now with the whole as a Manhattan Institute fellow, because that's like what's motivating all of these surgeries in the first place.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. What would you say to someone claiming that that's the case, that you can have a different brain from your, like a female brain and a male body, or vice versa? What's a good rebut for that?
Yeah. So
if that's not too big of a question to ask.
There's several ways to go at it. So the papers they use to like argue this they're nonsensical. They don't control for like sexuality, and we know from studies that if you do like brain scans of gay men and lesbians, they have like certain regions of their brain that are kind of more skewed towards the opposite sex that you would expect. Okay, so that's a thing, but that doesn't mean you're born in the wrong body. It just means you have certain structures that are more feminized and masculinized. But this is no different than any other trait or organ that you have. I mean, we know that like, I don't know if you've heard about like digit ratios, and they use that as a proxy for like how much testosterone or like type of androgens you experienced in utero. So that you can measure like the ratios of your digit lengths. And if you're exposed to more testosterone, the ratio shifts. And lo and behold, if you like measure the hands of a bunch of lesbians, their hands tend to be more masculine, skewed towards, you know, what you would more typically expect to see in males in terms of digit ratios, and vice versa. So our organs are masculinized or feminized in certain ways, but just because like you're a woman and you have like really masculine hands, like if you just like, you know, you got man hands, like you don't have like hands that are, you know, on the wrong body. It's not like you literally have the hands of a male on your hand. You just have masculine hands. And that's the same way with brains too. You might have certain structures of your brain that are more feminized, and if we scanned your brain, maybe a doctor would be like, "Oh, this looks like the brain of a typical female." It's like, nope, it's actually a male brain. It's like, okay, like doesn't mean you're born in the wrong body. It's just, this is just natural biological variation that we have on literally every trait of our body. It doesn't change your sex. It doesn't mean you're trapped in the wrong body. It just means, yeah, there's this biological variation. Let masculine women be masculine women. Let feminine men be feminine men. Like, there's nothing wrong here. Nothing needs to be changed. No scalpels needed in this situation here.
It's like they'll take that exception to the rule and then use that as the excuse to try and change the rule entirely.
And with the trans stuff too, there's so many activist arguments that they use to like attack the sex binary. There's probably over 30 different arguments. I'm working on a book that like goes through them systematically because I don't think anyone's is like had to deal with them, all of them, as much as I have. And so this is why like I try to get on like as an expert witness as much as possible for cross-examination, because you could be like a really cited biologist that is studying the evolution of sex and things like that and know the gametic definition. But if you haven't been like doing combat with these gender activists who just have so many twisted arguments, like you're not going to know how to respond to them. You're just going to be like, what the hell is this person even saying? Like, this is crazy. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do, is that person who's just like, I've heard literally everything they have to say. I know what they're going to say before they finish their sentence. And that's just kind of what I've dedicated myself to. Someone's got to do it, I guess. I
was just going to say, someone's got to. That sounds excruciating. But yeah, someone has to do it. That's how I feel with James Lindsay diving into all this woke right stuff constantly. I'm like, I've been diving into it a lot lately, particularly as it pertains to, you know, I'm an evangelical Christian, so as much as it pertains to that. And but man, he's been in the trenches with this stuff for years and years with just Marxism in general. And it's like I feel like he has it all memorized. He has all these arguments memorized. He knows their arguments better than they do. And to get to that point, though, I mean, you have to really dedicate yourself and take a lot of arrows. I mean, I'm sure you feel the same way.
James has always been just like the machine gunner, like berserker, the first one that goes in there. And he makes it, like, people don't give him enough credit, but he makes it easier for everyone else to like come after him and like participate in these spaces. Because he's like, he's usually the first one. Like, he's got a really high sensitive, like, you know, if there's like Marxism anywhere, he'll like detect it like 1 part per billion. He's like, there's Marxism here. He'll sniff it out. And he can do it with like other areas too. He was like the go-to person during like the whole BLM riots and DEI, because no one knew the language that was being used for all the BLM and DEI stuff. And so he was like this Rosetta Stone, like, what are they saying, James? And now he's doing this on this topic. And, you know, I think we owe him so much credit for putting himself out there, you know, and I'm glad he's in a space where he's able to be impervious to, like, I guess, real cancellation. Like, he's got new discourses. He's able to at least make enough money giving talks and with his website and do stuff where he can be this person that goes, you know, on the front line and take all the arrows. I'm not as like aggressive as James is online, but I have a Substack and I can support myself as well. And that's kind of what I and a lot of other people early into the game did, is we need to find a way to make ourselves uncancelable, because they will go after us. And they tried to like get Substack to take Stripe off, our accounts and all that stuff. And it's brutal. And James is doing a great job.
Yeah, and it's the one thing I noticed too is these attacks. I've seen this against you. I've definitely seen this against James, where you guys aren't Christians, but there's a lot of people that are on the woke right or the Christian nationalist right, that whatever they want to call it, dissident right. There's so many different names for it at this point, where they'll claim that guys like you are anti-Christian, you hate Christians, you're actively working against Christians, and seeing all the stuff you guys have done, it should be Christians of all people in their assessment and worldview that should be at the front lines of this stuff. So why is it a James Lindsay? Why is it a Colin Wright? Why is it these other people who aren't even Christians who are taking up the cause that Christians should be actively taking up themselves? And instead, what do? They sideswipe you guys, and it's crazy. It's absolutely insane watching. Especially with James Lindsay, where he's the guy who really made all of that SBC stuff. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, it's easy for them. Well, I think it's just a tactic they do. I mean, because you get people, you got like Joel Berry, you got Seth Dillon, like these are Christians. Seth Dillon's got a much larger account than I do. I think even larger than James Lindsay's.
I think he's almost
there's a lot
of at this point.
Yeah, there's a lot of evangelical Christians who are attacking this stuff, but it's just easier to like point to James Lindsay or me or something like that, and then equate us with like the worst that the online atheist sphere has to offer, which is actual like Christian hate and all that stuff. And they're pretending like it's me and James or whatever that are leading this movement, just because it's easier for them to try to dismiss it all. It's just a bunch of like former leftist atheists who their influence is waning, and now they need to get back in the graces of the left. It's like, no, I'm never gonna get back in their good graces. Like, there's no possibility that happening.
You burn the ships.
My motivation at all.
Yeah, you and James burn the ships.
Totally burn.
Yeah, that's the funny thing, is that I see that criticism all the time, where it's the people that are speaking up against the woke right in particular, which of course I've done a little bit of writing on that and research and stuff. I've done a couple podcasts on that as well. They act like the people actually on the woke right make the claim that the people that are fighting the woke right they're just disaffected liberals and atheists, when in reality the majority of people that I interact with that are fighting against the woke right are Christians and conservatives who are trying to essentially, which they think this is a bad thing, I think it's a good thing, and if it's against something like this, to gatekeep the right and the Christian influence in society away from neo-Nazism and neo-integralism and fascism and all this weird stuff that they're just overtly embracing now, white nationalism. And I know those are all words that the left tries to use as pejoratives against the right, but these people are actually those things. Like, they've just fully embraced it at this point, a lot of them. But yeah, it is usually, at least from my analysis, it's mostly Christians and conservative Christians that are, on the front lines with you, with James Lindsay, with others. I don't know, what have you noticed that at all, or from your perspective, is it mostly Christians that you're interacting with against this stuff? Linking arms?
Yeah, it is mostly Christians.
Yeah.
And I think the people who are legitimately woke, right, they understand that it is mostly Christians as well. I mean, I think this is why they went so hard on like the Christ is King stuff, because they were trying to just like dare all the Christians who are against that stuff to disagree or to somehow find an issue with this phrase Christ is King, even though they're clearly using it in a different way.
Same thing they did with BLM on the left. Yeah,
exactly. With BLM, I think we both had like articles that were talking about this stuff. I mentioned it like I'm an evolutionary biologist, and I'm a strong believer in Darwinian evolution. But if there was like a eugenics movement out there and they were like chanting Darwin is great, it's like, well, knowing that they're like a eugenics movement means that when they're saying Darwin is great, like, I agree that like he's a great scientist and human, but I'm not going to like join their chant, just ignorantly, because like, well, they clearly have an agenda that is completely opposed to what I don't, what I would ever agree with. That's kind of what's going on there. And they're trying to just like dare Christians to break ranks and things like that. And it's really gross, but I think, unfortunately, I think it's kind of effective too. But
it's effective, unfortunately, but at the same time, I think it kind of exposes who they really are. Because I think you're right. I think that's exactly what it is. I think that they're trying to get Christian. They're trying to paint it as if the Christians that are refusing to say this along with them they're siding with the atheists. They're siding with the people who hate God. Is kind of how they're framing it, which is dishonest and inaccurate for a whole list of reasons. But yeah, it's people using phrases that no one would disagree with at face value. Well, I mean, there's people that would disagree with the phrase Christ is king at face value, but to the audience that they're addressing, Christian conservatives are not going to disagree with that phrase, no matter where you're landing on this. But then they're going to use that phrase, similar with BLM, but then they're going to use that phrase as a way to almost Trojan horse in a bunch of other ideas that have nothing to do with the actual phrase. So like with Black Lives Matter, it was say Black Lives Matter, and they're going to harass people in public. Like there's a famous picture of that huge, horde of people wearing all black at the protest, and they're surrounding this like nice looking lady just sitting there trying to eat dinner. Yeah. And she's just sitting there like leaning back, confused. That's what they're doing, essentially. It has nothing to do with, they're trying to get her to say Black Lives Matter. It has the ideology or the agenda that they're pushing with a lady like that, or when the woke right says Christ is king, has nothing to do with the actual phrase. The phrase is just the way to scapegoat you for not going along and saying the phrase with them. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's insane.
It's super effective given like the social dynamic aspect of it. Like, humans, we're just like so susceptible to any threat of social ostracism. Yeah, it's just like we're just fine-tuned to just be like, that's the worst thing that could possibly happen, because in the past this meant basically like sudden death for you if you're suddenly exiled from your social group. So I knew that there would be this moment where it's just like the right gets to a point where they've risen in their ranks, and they have more like cultural power now, and they want to flex it a little bit. And so I knew that they had to be like this big tent party when wokeness was going crazy because of how unpopular wokeness was. And so I kind of knew that I was on borrowed time a little bit with some of these people, and that they would then, once they got like their movement, then they would sort of, I guess, tighten up the ropes of their tent, make it a little smaller, and really just force out the ones that they think are like heretics, which is like, I guess, me and James and things like that. But I think I'm going to constantly be going back and forth over the course of decades, as both sides sort of try to trim out and flex, and each one has to go back and forth between having an open tent, a large tent, and a small tent. I just think that's kind of what happens. It's just the nature of the beast.
Yep. And I feel like the relatively sane, or as they want to call them, normie, quote unquote. I see this phrase been thrown around a lot. The normie people in the middle that just, we don't want to chop kids up, and we don't want rampant abortion, and we don't want our liberties trampled on, and just we like the Constitution, and we like the ability to vote and to have our voice heard, and we want to be able to have conversations like this and dialogue and have freedom of speech. All general stuff that you'd think mostly everybody would be cool with.
And they do. I think
we're getting trampled the one direction or the other. It's that's what I feel like with the woke left. It's like, okay, from 2020 until now, at least since I've been really paying attention, you're just getting bombarded with the woke left, losing friends over it, the whole 9 yards. To now on the woke right, now it's like transitioned over here, and it's like we just climbed out of that ditch, and now there's this other ditch we're just readily falling into and willingly falling into. It seems like on the right, it's like, we just did this. Like, what are we doing?
I think they're going to see the wokeness is so unpopular, no matter what side it comes on to. And I think that the reason Trump won, honestly, is because of people who, a large segment of like the disaffected, slightly left of center people who were just so disgusted with wokeness. I mean, literally wokeness was the reason that I supported Trump at the end. Like a couple weeks before the election, like I was going to abstain and not vote for anyone. But then 2 weeks before, also because of like Doge came in there and stuff. But really my main issue was just, we need to root out wokeness because it is so toxic. And if we give Kamala 4 years here, like it's just going to get more and more entrenched in every institution, and who knows if Trump's going to succeed, but at least there's a chance. At least he's going to
at least
the
there's
best
that
he
sliver
can
of this good.
it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's at least a little hope there. And also, I think that people would call me a single issue voter when I was talking about how all I cared is about wokeness, but I would always respond that it's kind of just like an every issue, because it's not like I'm voting because of abortion rights or I'm voting because of climate change. Like those are kind of like very, compartmentalized issues you can vote on. Wokeness is like this. It's like a lens. Like you put on these goggles, and then every single issue that you look at,
whether it is abortion or climate change issues or anything.
It's everything. It's like a totalizing worldview, and so it's a shame that we're seeing similar, those slightly differently warped goggles on the right being put on. But it's going to be deeply unpopular. I think it's the worst thing that the right could be doing to themselves at this moment in time, for sure.
Yeah. What do you think? I know James certainly has some theories on this. What do you think the goal is for people on the right? Do you think they're just trying to split up the right and then try and consolidate power that way? Or do they think they're actually going to get institutional power on the right and embed themselves in the Trump administration? Or what do you think the play is?
I think it's like a power game for like the more radical people. I don't think it's any different than we saw on like the woke left, because there was like this paper years ago called like a political tribes or something like that. I can't remember quite the name of it, but they kind of had these really detailed surveys, and they showed that the people who could really be classified as like the progressive activist type, what we'd call woke, was only I think like 8% of the population, and it's like on the left hand side. I think there's a similar percentage of people on the right who might be accurately classified as like this woke, or it might even be smaller, I think. But they're super active, and they're Machiavellian in the way they go about things, and they lie, and they all this stuff to get power. And we've seen their language games they play with, like, Christ is king. So they are trying to get power just because they do have a more authoritarian, like actually sort of racist view of the world too. So all we can be doing is just trying to call out the same patterns we saw on the left, and hopefully we can stop it before it takes over like it did on the left.
Man, I hope so. That's why I've spent so much time over the last 6 months, especially writing about this, almost exclusively posting about it, because we've seen how destructive it is on the left. We've seen how it just eats institutions alive. It eats churches alive. I mean, how many, myself being an evangelical Christian, being someone who looked up to a lot of evangelical institutions like the Southern Baptist Convention and the Gospel Coalition and, Christianity Today back in the day, and a bunch of different evangelical leaders that kind of now have fallen prey to all this stuff, at least on the woke left, from 2016 up through recently. And now it's a lot of these same people. They're just, it's like they're unplugging woke from one outlet and then just plugging it into the one next to it. And it's like they have not learned their lesson. And, I think that's really, you're right. That's all we really can do is just highlight what's going on, use the same arguments that we used against the woke left and be like, this is the exact same thing that's happening over here, Yeah,
I do think if there's any kind of silver lining, it's like the fact that a lot of people on the right have been so used to and so sick and disgusted with all the woke stuff. There's at least probably a little more policing going on the right, because there was almost none of it going on the left until it was too late. But the fact that we're actually like having the debate on X, and it's going back and forth. I mean, who knows if we're going to win, but I think we're at least a few steps ahead of what happened on the left, like when it was just like total domination over there. At least we're calling out those things, waving our hands around and trying to get attention to it. So hopefully we can just, kill this thing in the cradle.
Yeah. But, I think, props to guys like you and James Lindsay, who aren't technically conservatives and who aren't Christians, who are in the trenches with Christians and conservatives actually fighting this stuff, because it matters. I think, evangelical Christians are the largest voting bloc in the country. Kind of where we go is where the country goes, in a sense. And if we get overtaken by all this woke stuff, whether it's the right or the left, good luck. It's everybody's screwed. Over. Yeah. But
it's scary to think about.
It is. Anyways, this has been great. We're at about an hour here. Any closing remarks? Anything to say that'll offend people? No, I'm kidding. I guess, where can people find you? And any exciting things that you're working on coming up?
So I don't have too many offensive things to say. People always think when they see my Twitter account that the avatar I have on there, they're like, you look like you're British and you look like you're going to be an asshole. But I'm actually very just pretty calm.
That's what I thought at first as well. Yeah.
So yeah, nothing. I have nothing offensive to say. Sorry, but
that's good.
Yeah. So my Twitter is the main place to find me, and my handle is @SwipeWright, and that's WRIGHT. And then I have a Substack called Reality's Last Stand, and that's just realityslaststand.com. It's kind of a magazine. I post a lot of articles on there from myself and other people as well. It's very pro, liberalism in the classical sense. I post articles from religious people and from atheists, and I like having debates and symposium stuff going on there to look at issues from multiple angles, all that type of stuff, very free speechy. So I guess just look out for some papers I'm writing about the sex binary that are going to be in peer-reviewed journals and debunking of the brain sex stuff. I'm hoping they're going to give me a Nobel Prize for discovering the sex binary, because apparently no one ever wrote this down.
Nobody ever knew this before. Yeah,
first person to publish gets the award, right? So I'm hoping, but that's about
That's crazy. No, there's no literature where there's an explicit definition of that. Really?
There's a lot of people alluding to these things, the gamete is what we call this and is that, but no one's ever just really just from the first principles and exactly why, and just make every single link in the chain. Because during the time when they discovered this stuff, it's we always knew what males and females were to some degree, and then we found out when we had microscopes, we could actually look at what is the thing that makes these. It was just sort of everyone just kind of made an observation, and they just kind of moved forward oh, okay, this is it. And then they just,
it's so patently obvious there wasn't a need to really.
Yeah, it was one of those, oh, they found it. They saw it in the microscope, and then everyone just sort of updated their version of reality and forgot to write it down. Right. I guess. So that's wild. We're going to be doing that. So I guess look out for those, and that's about it.
Awesome. And then you said you have a book coming out as well? Or are you working on a book?
So I'm working on writing it at this moment. I don't have any release dates or anything like that, but I'll keep everyone posted.
Awesome. Yeah, sounds good.
I also have a new podcast I started. I'm not used to advertising for that, but it's called Citation Needed, and it's citationneededpodcast.com. It's on Substack, and I'm co-hosted with Brad Palumbo, and we go over a lot of crazy woke papers.
Oh, that'll be fun to listen to for sure.
Involved. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I'll link all that in the description for everybody so they can go check that out, and I'll definitely go check some of that stuff out as well. So this has been good. I appreciate you taking the time, and we'll do it again soon. So, all right.
Sounds good, man.
Yep.
See ya.
See ya.